energy bills are rising at a historic rate, and there's no end in sight. Talk to enough people and you'll soon realize nearly everyone's shocked at their recent electricity bills. Some studies reveal energy costs have skyrocketed by as high as 60% in as little as 2 years. That's why tens of thousands are installing this magical little device from SavePowerBills.com to help slash their energy bills. This sophisticated gadget stabilizes electrical currents, reduces dirty electricity, and helps protect your appliances and electronics. Simply plug it into your home's wall outlet to help lower energy consumption and ultimately help reduce your power bills every month. Countless 5-star reviews back up the notion that this device is one of the most efficient ways to save money while beating the greedy power companies. But there's more. If you order now, you'll also receive 65% off, fast shipping within the USA, hassle-free returns, and last but not least, a 60-day satisfaction guarantee. Just go to SavePowerBills.com to take advantage of this limited time deal before they sell out. Once again, that's SavePowerBills.com.
Pass open now! Pass open now!
That's the sound outside City Hall Thursday, where dozens of housing advocates, tenants, and community leaders are demanding City Council pass the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, known as COPA.
You know, there are certain moments throughout history where you realize that things are not going to get any better. In fact, they are going to get significantly worse. We are going to double down on absolute idiocy. And a perfect example of this is this law that was passed into law by the New York City Council that is awaiting Adams to sign it, veto it, or do nothing and hand it off to Mamdani, that essentially will block private sales of multifamily homes in favor of allowing New York sanctioned nonprofits and city agencies to have right of first refusal over these properties, which will produce a massive delay in the real estate market, which of course will definitely lead to more expensive housing for all of us. And it's all done in the name of affordable housing, because we can always say that affordable housing line while simultaneously doing policies that produce the exact opposite result. And that's exactly what this COPA law is. And it's absolutely absurd and ridiculous. And it's what we're going to talk about today on the eve of Mamdani being sworn in to mayor of New York City. Please, Eric Adams, veto this. Make them try to pass it again. They probably will, but you can block it at least for a little bit by doing so. And don't give Mamdani and these idiot Democrats this kind of power over each and every real estate transaction. Now, we do have some good news in that Mayor Eric Adams actually did veto this as one of his last acts as the mayor of New York City. But the thing is, Mamdani has pledged his support for this dumbass law. The city council voted on it 30 to 15, so they can easily pass it into law again, at which point in time Zohran Mamdani said he would sign it, thus bringing back this law and maybe even potentially a dumber version of this law going forward. So everything in this video still stands. It's just right now Eric Adams did the right thing, so it happens to be delayed just a little bit. Now look, I'm going to explain this further, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
COPA would give nonprofit and community-based groups the first chance to buy apartment buildings before big investors do, a way to keep homes affordable and curb real estate speculation. The law is modeled after similar programs in San Francisco and Washington, D.C.
So you want to know why on this channel I've pointed out time and time again that this myth of Blackstone buying up all the single-family homes to make sure you will own nothing and like it is just that, a myth? It's because of situations like this, because when you allow falsehoods, when you allow untruths to take over and be blamed as the reason why things are unaffordable in your society, what ultimately ends up happening is a bunch of idiots gather together and they craft legislation in order to address a problem that is not actually causing the problem of unaffordability, and it actually exacerbates the real legitimate symptoms of said problem. In addition to that, when you hear that this law is modeled after something that was passed in 2 locations, and those locations are the District of Columbia and San Francisco, 2 locations with incredibly unaffordable housing, how can you with a straight face say that this is a great policy, have a bunch of activists out there cheering for it? Well, guess what? When you're not connected to reality and you're the same people that voted in a damn communist to be mayor of New York City, I understand how you could arrive at those conclusions. But again, this is where we're at in New York City. This kind of madness is just taking hold. But let us hear more about how this is a great policy, because it's going to keep all these people in their homes and it's going to keep prices low, just like very affordable cities in San Francisco and Washington, D.C.
tenants like myself are left fighting.
Among those rallying for the bill, Denise Clay, a resident of 287 Prospect Avenue in South Slope, Brooklyn. She says she's fighting to stay in the place she's called home for years.
Tenants need solutions, not problems. Just because the tax abatement has expired doesn't mean that we all now suddenly are eager to move. We've put in roots where we live. We've helped build these communities.
So first of all, Denise, you haven't built anything. Let's be perfectly clear about this. Secondly, why are you smiling while at the same time talking about your sad sack life and how you might have to move because, God forbid, rent would be raised at your location in order to match market rates? We need to keep it stabilized. We need to hamper the person who provided you this property for years and years in order for you to plant roots, because it's just so mean and so bad and so terrible that, by the way, the New York City Council did not renew the abatement proceedings properly. They actually changed it up to make them significantly worse, and you want to address that failure in government with another failed government policy because you have no brain. You are the exact problem. You're the exact person who this city would be better off without. So please, for the love of God, landlord, raise her rent 10,000% and get her the hell up out of the city.
She says her building once received a tax abatement, but after it expired, tenants found themselves at risk of losing their homes. For residents like Clay, COPA could be life-changing.
The passing of COPA would be a step in the right direction for tenants like myself. Essentially, it would help know that our city has our back in working to preserve our affordability and to create, basically stable, secure housing that's long-term.
So look, normally I don't want to hate civilians, regular, ordinary people that are doing interviews because they're dumb, uninformed, completely ignorant, asinine, and ridiculous. But again, this policy that she's advocating for is modeled after policies that are in places with the highest rents in the entire country, the District of Columbia and San Francisco. The idea that New York City doesn't have enough regulations is absolutely absurd, but the thing is, we actually can examine whether or not this worked in the city of San Francisco. We can look at their law, which was passed in 2019, and what we will discover is that about 230 affordable housing units were allegedly preserved at the top end estimate with this particular program. So in 6 years, we had 230 units preserved, but what is the cost? What is the expense? What is the impact of this dumbass policy? Well, let me explain it to you guys out there in the audience. COPA is called the Community Opportunity Purchase Act, which is supposedly a proven tool to expand and preserve the supply of affordable housing and combat displacement. Now, it claims that it is modeled after the successful version of this policy implemented in San Francisco and DC, which again saved 200 units. And essentially what this does is put in a bunch of stupid, dumbass restrictions on selling properties in order to stop those evil investors from daring to invest in your city. Now, I will remind you guys that the city of Austin, no rent control, no rent stabilization. All they did was fix their zoning code. And guess what? Rents are falling in that particular city. You make it easier to build. And guess what? People build, especially when rents are going up and they're incentivized to do so. But instead, we got this stupid, dumbass.
Energy bills are rising at a historic rate, and there's no end in sight. That's why tens of thousands are using this amazing little device from SavePowerBills.com. It's a small but smart gadget that stabilizes electrical currents, reduces dirty electricity, and helps protect your electronics. Just plug it into your home's wall outlet to help lower energy consumption and ultimately help reduce your power bills every month. Order now to get 65% off plus many free bonuses before they sell out by going to SavePowerBills.com. That's SavePowerBills.com. Order now.
COPA thing that will allow connected nonprofits to the city of New York and, of course, the government, the city of New York, to buy up properties first. And in fact, it requires homeowners or property owners to notify the city and these nonprofits prior to selling their property that they're planning on doing so in order to get them the first chance to buy it. COPA gives qualified nonprofits, including community trusts, CLTs, a first chance to bid on multifamily properties when a landlord sells. Specifically, INT 902 creates a process and a time frame for nonprofits to make competitive offers. Before putting an apartment building up for sale, a landlord must notify the New York City Department of Housing of Preservation and Development of its intent to sell, provide basic information about the building, and provide basic information about the building's rent rolls and finances. Now, the city has to be informed 30 days prior to you listing the building for sale that you are intending to do so. And guess what? Qualified nonprofits have about 60 days to decide if they want to put in an offer. Not make an offer, but decide if they want to put in an offer. And then after they notify you within that 60-day period that they intend on putting an offer in, they have 120 days to make an offer to you, which essentially means that over half a year is going to pass from when you decide that you want to sell to when you can list it on the open market. Now, obviously, when you're listing a property on the open market, you want to get the best price possible. So you're going to go through these waiting periods no matter what, which again, just makes this an unnecessary delay. In addition to that, nothing is stopping nonprofits or any of these organizations from buying the property in the open market when it's listed for competitive bids, but apparently that's not good enough for New York City Democrats, so we have to add in this half a year delay, which by the way, not only applies to completed buildings, but it also applies to lots that theoretically could build buildings large enough in order to qualify as multifamily purchases that nonprofits have right of first refusal over. And guess what the number of units is for that qualification? 3. A triplex is enough that you have to go through this whole process, and many of the triplexes in the city of New York are owned by mom and pop landlords, so if they need to sell their property, they have to go through this whole process or maybe take a worse, crappier offer from a nonprofit if they decide to bog them down with these delays because they can't get from under their property fast enough, because apparently this program is all about preserving affordable housing, which is even more absurd when you realize that the number of units that you have to even qualify to be forced into the rent stabilization program is 6 or more. And yet this program applies to buildings with 3 or more apartments.
I wanted to set the record straight about what this bill does.
Deyanira Del Rio is the executive director of the New Economy Project. She described COPA's potential impact.
What it does is really give a small number of vetted, qualified, mission-driven, affordable housing groups, including community land trusts, a first opportunity to bid on certain multifamily buildings when a landlord puts it up for sale.
And for folks like Clay, COPA could let nonprofits jump in first to buy her shaky building. That might keep her rent from shooting up now that her tax break is gone, but would still depend on who wins the bids and what the city says yes to.
It would be a total game changer if COPA passes today.
Now, to make things even stupider, after you go through that whole delay, after you go through that whole unnecessary process, get your property out on the open market, and then you receive a bid on the open market for your property, guess what happens? Guess what you have to do? You then have to go back and contact the nonprofits and the city that bid on your property and see if they will match your property, to which they have a lengthy period of time to decide whether or not they're going to do so, at which point in time your deal will likely fall through because, you know, New York City is absolutely wrecking everything, and they don't seem to understand that lines of credit do not extend from now until the end of time, and sometimes these deals need to be closed in a timely way. Or maybe they do understand, and this is all a part of Mamdani's plan in order to rob private property owners of said property because he thinks decommodifying housing is going to lead to lower prices, even though the exact opposite has been demonstrated to be true across the country. Now, of course, if you try to skip this whole process, what you'll end up incurring are massive fines, which again, to big property owners are probably going to be no big deal. They're about $30,000 for failing to notify the city 30 days in advance of you intending to list your property. But on a small person who, again, only owns a triplex, that is obviously devastating. So essentially, this is going to skew negatively toward the smaller landlords, like everything that the city of New York is going to do. But since it also applies to plots of land that could potentially be upzoned or built up with 3 units or more properties, what this ultimately ends up doing is completely undermining the City of Yes agenda, which allowed upzoning in a bunch of these areas in order to increase the supply of housing, which was a signature achievement under the Adams administration, even though it was voted on by voters. So all those policies about how we're going to build more housing, they're all completely undercut now that you have these massive delays, again, in buildings with over 2 units. So what do you think's going to happen? Instead of having triplexes or, again, these larger buildings that, again, the city of Yes was aiming to build, people are going to be reduced to 2 in order to avoid the regulation. And if you think that's crazy, remember what I talked about earlier on about how they got rid of the tax abatement in the New York City level, and that was causing problems for the dumbass that was advocating for COPA? Well, even though that tax abatement scheme ended up expiring, they actually added in a new one, and in that new one, you don't get the credits and costs end up going up significantly after you get over 100 units. And unsurprisingly, because all of a sudden it becomes significantly more costly to build 100 units or more, a bunch of buildings that likely would have been over 100 units are now stopping at 99. Again, according to the New York Post, it's something like a 700% increase in the number of buildings with exactly 99 units in them, again, in order to avoid those restrictions. And the same thing is going to happen now that you put this crushing regulation on 3-family homes. Now what's going to be built is 2-family homes, and this is all the fault of the New York City Council. They're an absolute embarrassment, and this is what you get when you listen to the dumbest people humanly possible that are advocating for policies from the worst places to build and rent in the entire country, the District of Columbia and San Francisco. So yeah, we're ringing in the new year with absolute insanity, but what do we expect from an electorate that actually put a communist into office for the sole purpose of destroying housing? Now, with all that being said, Happy New Year to everybody. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about New York City again failing miserably. Till next time.